2010 is what could be best described as a combination of a great and surprising season, as the Chiefs finished 10-6 and won the AFC West. They got a home playoff game. So things were looking good for 2011, and then the season started. They lost their first 3 games. Guys like Jamal Charles and Eric Berry and Tony Moeaki, guys that were key contributors to the 2010 success, went down early in the season with season-ending injuries. The Chiefs tried to come back from that, won their next 4 games, but a 4-game skid in the middle of the season, for all intents and purposes, ended the season for him. Todd Haley ended up being let go. Romeo Crennel took over as the interim coach. And this team still fought, still was competitive, and ended up finishing 7-9. Last place in the division, sure, but only 1 game out of first if you really think about it. That's how much parity and mediocrity there was in the AFC West last year. Romeo Crennel is there to stay this year. He takes over as the new head coach. And when you look at the Chiefs on offense, they struggled mightily last year. You know, not only did their star running back Jamal Charles miss most of the season, but Matt Cassel missed a few games with injury. And they just really struggled to move the ball effectively, in particular through the air, and just did not score a lot of points. And in the NFL, if you're going to win, at times your offense has to be able to score points. And when you are one of the worst teams in the league at scoring points, and in particular moving the ball through the air, you're going to struggle to win a lot of football games. So for that offense, they added Peyton Hillis. You've got Jonathan Baldwin now is going to be the starter opposite Dwayne Bowe at wide receiver. And hopefully for that team, health is going to be a critical player, because you'll have Jamal Charles back, and you'll have Tony Moeaki back, and maybe Matt Cassel could stay healthy and demonstrate more consistency, which is something he needs to do. This is year 4 of the Matt Cassel experience. And you think about it, Len Dawson retired in 1975. The Chiefs really haven't had a long-term franchise quarterback since. This is either the put-up-or-shut-up year for Matt Cassel for the Kansas City Chiefs. Either he plays better and shows that he's the man, or the Chiefs are going to be going into the offseason trying to draft their quarterback of the future. On the defensive side of the ball, their defense played very well at times. And, you know, in particular, were really good against the pass. They finished in the top 12 in the league in both yards allowed and points allowed. So there were some encouraging signs there. Even with guys like Eric Berry going out for the year, they still played very well, in large part led by Tamba Hali, who had a dozen of the team's 29 sacks last year. The Chiefs still struggled mightily to generate a pass rush, which is easily their biggest bugaboo on defense. Now, as a team, their biggest bugaboo is offense, so as a result, that's why they took a project like Dontari Poe, the defensive tackle from Memphis, 11th overall. Oh, God. Scott Pioli loves those 3-4 defensive linemen. Tyson Jackson, you know, fucking Dontari Poe. Ooh, you already have Glenn Dorsey or whatever. When you look at this team heading into 2012, you know, you would hope for their sake that they're able to stay healthy. They're going to be on offense looking for Jamal Charles and Peyton Hillis to provide a nice ball control running attack. And in the passing game, they really need Jonathan Baldwin, their first-round pick for 2011, to step up and become a legitimate number 2 option that takes some pressure off of Dwayne Bowe and allows him more freedom to cause some real damage. On the defensive side of the ball, it's still going to come down to if they could generate a better pass rush. If they can, this could be a top 10 defense and keep this team in games most all the way throughout the year. But when all is said and done, 2 words, Matt Cassel. That's what will determine this 2012 season for the Kansas City Chiefs. Is Matt Cassel going to establish himself as a legitimate big-time starting quarterback in the NFL? I don't think so. I think he'll stay healthy all year, but I think he'll be mediocre all year. I expect the Chiefs to finish like 7-9 again, bring up the rear in the AFC West, and they will go into the offseason looking for their new franchise quarterback. The San Diego Chargers in 2011 missed the playoffs for the 2nd straight season, and they finished 8-8 in a tie technically for first, but didn't win the division. Yeah, 8-8 in a tie for first, technically. Didn't win the division because of tiebreakers. Not a good year for the San Diego Chargers. 2012, there probably isn't a coach more on the hot seat right now than Norv Turner, especially after 2 straight years of missing the playoffs. What were some of the bugaboos of this Chargers team last year? Let's look at the offensive side of the ball. Phillip Rivers threw for 4,600 yards and 27 touchdowns, but he also turned the ball over 20 times in the air and put 5 more balls on the ground. 25 total turnovers. That's not going to get the job done in the NFL. Phillip Rivers had a phenomenal MVP-type season in 2010, and one thing he did was a much better job of taking care of the ball. He has to take better care of the ball than he did last year if this team's going to have a shot at sniffing the playoffs. Another thing they're going to need is for this team to stay healthy. Sure, Rivers threw for a ton of yards, and they still scored a lot of points and were able to move the ball consistently. But guys like Malcolm Floyd and Antonio Gates and Ryan Matthews have to stay healthy. If ever there was a season, these guys have to stay healthy and stay away from these ticky-tack little knick-knack injuries. It's this year, especially with guys like Vincent Jackson leaving and going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Mike Tolbert no longer being in the backfield. The Chargers need health as much as anything else. Although on offense, I think the additions of Robert Meacham and Eddie Royal to go along with Floyd and Vincent Brown could potentially make this passing attack of the Chargers a little more dangerous and a little more versatile, because before, when you would have Jackson and Malcolm Floyd on the outside, you almost had two of the same type of receiver in a lot of ways. And they really lacked that guy that could sit there and create some space and short spaces over the middle, and the guys that could sit there and just burn you on a deep streak pattern. Well, I think they have some of those guys now, and guys like Eddie Royal and Vincent Brown, and especially Robert Meacham. So their offense could have a little bit of a different look, especially if Rivers is a little more careful with the football this year. On the defensive side of the ball last year, the Chargers' defense wasn't terrible, but they didn't generate a ton of pass rush. And then one thing in particular they struggled with was creating turnovers. Sometimes in the NFL, you might be able to get away with giving up a bunch of yards if you could sit there and get some pass rush. Or more importantly, a lot of times, create some turnovers and some big plays to give your team some momentum and halt the other team's momentum. And the Chargers just flat out didn't do a good enough job of that last year. So they drafted Melvin Ingram in the first round, who's looked very strong in the preseason, and they're really hoping that him alongside of guys like Antoine Barnes and Larry English, that they start to get some, dangerousness, if you will. What a terrible word, but you get the idea. That they become a bigger threat with their 3-4 defense. Make no mistake about it, though. You talk about everything else. This season is all about Norv Turner. Either he's going to be a guy that leads this team to the division title and they go into the playoffs and make a deep run, or Norv Turner's probably coached his last season in San Diego. It'll be very interesting to see if this Chargers team starts off slowly, which a lot of years they've done under Norv Turner in the past, if he'll even make it through the end of the season. I don't think the Chargers are going to do much better than they did last year. I know a lot of the pieces and a lot of the talent is in place to potentially win 10 or 11 ball games, but there's just something about them on paper that I just really don't like. So I still think they'll finish 8-8, maybe 9-7, and finish third in the AFC West. No mistake about it, the Denver Broncos in 2011 had a combination of good luck, good timing, some flukish things go their way, some bad luck by other teams, to be able to go 8-8 and still win the AFC West and win a playoff game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Make no mistake about it. This Broncos team in 2011 got by a lot on smoke and mirrors. At one point in time, they won 6 straight games, beating everybody in their division, and then other teams like the Jets and the Vikings and the Bears. Think about it. They had Prater kicking 59-yard field goals, helping them win games and shit like that. But then they lost their last 3 games against New England and Buffalo, who railroaded them, and then lost 7-3 to the Chiefs in Week 17 and still won the division. This is a team that won the division, finished 8-8, even though they could not consistently move the ball through the air behind Tim Tebow at all. Primarily their whole forte last year was control the clock, control the line of scrimmage, control the ball. Our defense will sit there and generate a pass rush, even though they give up a lot of yardage. And we'll find ways to luck into winning games. And that's exactly what happened. Now, looking forward to 2012, it should be no surprise that the Broncos threw their hat into the Peyton Manning sweepstakes, and John Elway was going to do everything he could to get Peyton Manning because he was no Tim Tebow fan. Tebow's gone. Tebow Mania goes to the Jets, and now the Peyton Manning era has officially begun in the Mile High City. When you look at the Broncos' offense heading into 2012, the talent cupboard is not exactly overflowing. You have guys on the outside like Demaryius Thomas and Eric Decker, who could be a surprising 1-2 combo for Peyton Manning to throw to, but the backfield has guys like Willis McGahee and Ronnie Hillman, not exactly big-time stars at that position, or in McGahee's case anymore. I think everybody's expecting Peyton Manning to come in, throw for 4,500 yards like the Peyton Manning that we all know, and that he's going to automatically lead this team to a divisional crown. And I just don't think that's the case. There are, deficiencies in talent in places on the offensive side of the ball. If Peyton Manning took this team to a 10-win season and threw for 4,000 or 4,200 yards, he should be the MVP of the league. Because by God, for once, he would have actually earned it. When you look at the defensive side of the ball, as much as everybody wants to talk about how great the Broncos' defense was, at times last year, yes, they were. In particular, their pass rush led by Von Miller. They still were a bottom half of the league defense. They still gave up a lot of points, gave up a lot of yardage. Yeah, they had a nice pass rush, but they really forced no turnovers at all. And this kind of epitomizes to me the fluky season that the Broncos had last year. They only had 9 interceptions and took 3 of them back to the house. It's those type of things that lucky teams get to go in their favor that help them win games that they probably shouldn't. When I look at the Denver Broncos in 2012, it's all going to be about Peyton Manning, sure, and what he could get out of that offense. But I still think there are a lot of holes on this team. This defense is still, to me, a long ways away from being a top 5 or top 10 unit. And, Peyton Manning needs more help on the offensive side of the ball. And quite frankly, he didn't get it in this year's draft. I expect the Broncos to finish 8-8, maybe 9-7, and be second place in the AFC West. Last year, I predicted that the Oakland Raiders would win the AFC West. And it looked like for a period of time that they were going to do it. At one point in time, they were 7-4. But then they kind of hit the skids, losing 4 out of their last 5 ball games. During the season, I guess the Raiders decided that they needed an upgrade at the quarterback position. And they did, make no mistake about it. But I still question if them giving up what they gave up to get a Carson Palmer was necessarily the right move. I think 2012 is going to be a greater indication of that. Because when Carson Palmer came in and took over the Raiders during the course of the season, there were some games he looked okay, and other games he looked very rusty and shaky. He had 13 touchdown passes and 16 interceptions. Gone from this Raiders offense in 2012 also was Michael Bush, who at times was kind of the de facto starter because Darren McFadden just consistently struggles to stay healthy, which is so frustrating. They got a very good season out of Darius Hayward-Bay, one of Al Davis's old pet choices as a first-round pick. He finished just short of a 1,000-yard receiving season. He also had guys like Denarius Moore show that they could potentially be weapons at the NFL level. On the defensive side of the ball, though, just like it's been the past few years, the Raiders can't stop anybody. On the ground, in the air, doesn't matter. The pass rush was okay. They didn't generate a lot of turnovers. And like I said again, they just could not stop anybody. So when you go into this 2012 season, some of you are going to sit there and say, why in the blue hell are you picking the Raiders to win the AFC West? Well, for one, I've done so the past couple seasons, and at some point in time, I just feel like they're bound to do it. Now that X is gone from this earth, maybe that'll be the inspiration they need to actually achieve above what they should be. I don't know. But I think Carson Palmer having a full season to work through stuff, he will be better. I expect Darren McFadden to have a season similar to what he did in 2010, and hopefully, most importantly, be able to play 13 or 14, if not all 16 games, be healthy, and be that dynamic dual-threat running back that Raiders fans expect from him when he's in the lineup. I expect guys like Darius Hayward-Bay and Denarius Moore and Jacoby Ford to provide some weapons for Carson Palmer to work with on the offensive side. I think the Raiders actually will be able to put up some points, which will surprise some people. On the defensive side of the ball, Rolando McClain is a stud. At some point in time, some of these other guys in that defense have got to step up. And I think this is the year that they do so. I just look at the Raiders and I see a team that at one point in time was the best team in that division last year. They were 7-4. They fell apart late. If they could stay away from that late season sag, I fully expect the Raiders to win 10 games, yeah, I said it, and win the AFC West. I really do. Let me know what you expect out of the AFC West this year. If you think I'm underrating the Broncos, overrating the Raiders, underrating the Chargers or the Chiefs, what have you, let me know down below. I'm the Schleg Daddy, and next time I'll be back with a look at the AFC South.